What happens when doing the right thing turns into the hardest fight of your life? Amy and Ty never imagined that helping someone they cared about could put their own family on the edge of losing everything. But sometimes, even the strongest hearts can be pushed too far when loyalty comes with a price. Asterisk. The morning sun touched the Heartland ranch, warm and golden, but inside, Amy felt a weight pressing on her chest. Bills were stacked on the kitchen counter like a wall she couldn't climb. She ran her fingers through them, each one heavier than the last. Across the table, Ty sat quietly, staring at the same numbers that had stolen their peace. The sound of the old clock ticking in the corner was the only thing breaking the silence. It had started a few weeks earlier. Hudson's ranch was in deep trouble. A sudden flood had destroyed his fences and taken out half his feed supply. When he came to Heartland, his voice trembled with shame. He didn't ask for help directly, but Amy saw the pain in his eyes. The same pain she'd seen in her father when things went wrong years ago. Without thinking twice, she had said they'd help. Ty looked surprised, but didn't argue. He knew Amy's heart too big to say no to anyone in need. At first, it felt right. They wrote the check, helped repair the barn, and drove home feeling proud. But now, weeks later, things looked different. The feed store bills had doubled, the therapy horses needed new equipment, and one of the trucks had broken down again. Ty's veterinary clinic was behind on payments, and Amy's clients were cutting back. Every day brought another reminder that generosity can sometimes dig a deeper hole. Ty leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "We'll figure it out," he said softly, though his voice didn't sound sure. Amy tried to smile, but her stomach tightened. She wanted to believe him. She always did. But deep down, she could feel the pressure building, like a storm rolling across the fields toward them later that day. She walked through the barn, her hand brushing against Spartan's mane. The horse's calm presence usually brought her peace, but not today. She thought about how Heartland had always stood for family, compassion, and strength. But now, she wondered if she had gone too far. Helping Hudson had come from the right place. But maybe the right thing wasn't always the easiest thing. When Ty joined her, his boots echoing on the wooden floor, Amy didn't look up. She just whispered, "I thought we could handle it." Ty's silence said more than words ever could. They both knew this was only the beginning, a quiet storm waiting to break. Asterisk. The wind that morning carried the smell of wet hay and wood smoke across Heartland. The air felt thick, heavy, as if even the sky knew something wasn't right. Amy stood by the paddock fence, her eyes on the horses grazing in the distance. They looked peaceful, untouched by the worries that kept her awake every night. But peace felt like a story she no longer believed in. Every act of kindness has a cost. She knew that now. Helping Hudson had been a choice made with love, not logic. At first it felt simple. A friend needed help and they had enough to share. But the truth was different. Heartland wasn't just their home anymore. It was their business, their dream, and the only thing keeping their family's history alive. Each dollar they gave away came back as another problem they couldn't solve. Ty was quieter these days. The man who once met every challenge head-on now spent his evenings bent over the kitchen table, the glow of his laptop casting shadows on his tired face. Amy often caught him staring at numbers that didn't add up. She wanted to tell him to stop worrying, to remind him that love could carry them through anything. But her voice always caught in her throat, trapped between pride and fear. At the diner in Hudson that afternoon, Lou slid into the booth across from Amy. Her sister's sharp eyes missed nothing. "You and Ty look worn out," she said. No hesitation, no sugarcoating. Amy tried to brush it off, stirring her coffee just to have something to do with her hands. Lou leaned forward. "You helped Hudson, didn't you?" Amy's silence was answer enough. Lou sighed, soft but full of concern. "You've got the biggest heart in Alberta, Amy, but hearts don't pay bills." Amy smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I couldn't let him lose everything. Not when we could help." Lou reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You can't save everyone. Sometimes helping one person means breaking yourself a little." Amy looked away, her chest tightening. She hated how true that sounded. That night, back at the ranch, Ty joined her outside. The sun had set behind the hills, leaving a deep orange glow over the fields. They stood side by side, wordless, watching Spartan move through the pasture. The world looked quiet, but Amy's mind was anything but. The debts were growing, the calls from suppliers were becoming more frequent, and Hudson hadn't repaid a cent. Not because he didn't want to, but because he's COULDN single quotes. Amy thought about telling Ty to stop helping everyone, to draw the line somewhere. But she couldn't. That wasn't who they were. Helping others was part of what made them them. Yet that same goodness was now pulling them under inch by inch. Ty finally broke the silence. "I don't regret helping him," he said, "but I wish it didn't feel like we're drowning for doing the right thing." Amy nodded slowly. Maybe that's what love does. It asks more from us than we think we can give. The stars began to rise over Heartland, cold and distant. Their light touched the old barns, the horses, and the two souls standing beneath them holding on to each other, even as the weight of kindness pressed down harder than ever. The morning began with the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. Amy stood by the sink, watching droplets race down the glass, her reflection faint and tired. The house was too quiet, not peaceful, just empty of words. Ty moved around behind her, silent, careful, as though even small sounds could break the fragile calm holding them together. They had stopped talking about money, not because the problem was gone, but because every conversation ended the same way, with both of them looking at the ground, too proud to admit how scared they were. The bills had found their way from the counter to a drawer. But Amy knew exactly where they were, hidden like secrets waiting to explode. Ty left early for the clinic. He didn't kiss her goodbye that morning, just gave a tired nod. She didn't blame him. His days had become endless cycles of sick animals, late payments, and clients who couldn't afford treatment. Every time he came home, his eyes carried the same exhaustion she felt in her bones in the barn. Amy brushed Spartan's mane with slow, steady strokes. The smell of hay and earth usually calmed her, but today it only reminded her of everything slipping through her fingers. Spartan turned his head, nuzzling her arm as if he knew she needed comfort. Amy smiled weakly. "We're trying, boy," she whispered. "We're trying so hard." That evening, Ty returned home, soaked from the rain, his boots heavy with mud. Amy was by the fireplace, sorting through old receipts. When he saw the pile, his voice rose before he meant it to. "I thought we agreed to leave that for now." Amy looked up, eyes sharp but tired. "Ignoring it won't make it disappear." Ty ran a hand through his wet hair, his voice low. "You think I don't know that? Every day I walk into that clinic, I see numbers instead of animals." She stared at him, heart pounding. "We did what we thought was right, Ty. Hudson needed us." He laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "And now who's going to help us, Amy?" The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Amy wanted to answer, to tell him that they'd survive like they always had. But for the first time, she wasn't sure. The silence stretched until only the fire crackled between them. She turned away, tears threatening to fall, and whispered, "We can't blame kindness for what's happening." Ty stepped closer, his voice rough. "Maybe not. But maybe kindness shouldn't cost this much." He walked out to the porch, leaving her alone with the flickering firelight. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like storm. Amy sank to the floor, her hands trembling over the receipts. In that moment, she realized it wasn't just money slipping away, it was the easy love they'd always taken for granted. Upstairs, the light from Ty's room glowed faintly under the door. Downstairs, Amy sat in the dim quiet, listening to the echo of his words. The ranch creaked softly around her, as if the old wood itself could feel the strain between them. Heartland had weathered countless storms, but this one was different. This storm lived inside them. The next morning, Heartland felt different, quieter, older, somehow. The barn doors groaned as Amy pushed them open, the hinges creaking like they, too, carried a secret. The horses shifted softly in their stalls, the smell of hay and dust rising into the cold air. Amy moved through the barn like a ghost, touching the wood beams that had stood for generations. This place had survived everything: storms, fires, heartbreak. But now, it was her and Ty who were breaking. Jack noticed before anyone said a word. He stood by the fence, coffee cup in hand, eyes narrowed against the light. He had seen that kind of silence before, the heavy kind that doesn't come from anger but from weariness. When Amy joined him, her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're up early," she said, pretending everything was fine. Jack didn't answer right away. He just took a slow sip, then said, "You and Ty look like two horses pulling in different directions." Amy's breath caught. "We're just tired, Grandpa." He looked at her, calm but knowing. Tired's one thing. Lost is another. Later that day, Lou arrived unannounced, carrying a stack of paperwork and that familiar bossy determination. She didn't ask to sit down. She just did. "I've been looking at the numbers," she started, glancing from Amy to Ty, who had come in from the barn, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You're drowning, and pretending otherwise isn't helping anyone." Ty frowned. "We don't need saving, Lou." Lou leaned forward. "You already tried saving someone else. How's that working out for you?" The room went still. Amy's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She couldn't. Every word Lou said was true. Jack finally spoke up from the corner, his voice soft but steady. "This place was built on helping others, but it's also built on knowing when to ask for help yourself." Amy blinked fast, trying not to cry. "I can't let Hudson think we regret helping him. That's not what Heartland stands for." Jack nodded slowly. "Then show him what Heartland really stands for: getting back up." That night, Amy sat on the porch steps. The sky stretched wide and endless above her. Ty joined her quietly, sitting close but not touching. For a while, they just listened. The crickets, the wind through the trees, the soft shuffle of horses in the barn. The sounds of home. Then Amy spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't keep pretending this will fix itself." Ty nodded. "I know. I didn't want to admit we were failing." She turned to him, her eyes tired but gentle. "We're not failing, Ty. We're learning how to start over." From the living room window, Jack watched them, a small smile touching his face. He'd seen storms like this before. Sometimes they tore fences down, but sometimes they cleared the land for something stronger. Inside, Lou made a few phone calls, her usual business tone softened by care. A plan was forming, a community event, something that could bring people together, maybe raise enough to ease the pressure. Heartland had always found its way through pain by turning it into purpose. As the porch light flickered, Amy rested her head on Ty's shoulder. For the first time in weeks, the silence between them didn't feel heavy. It felt like a beginning. The walls of Heartland seemed to breathe again, as if the house itself had been holding its breath, waiting for them to remember what it truly meant to be home. The next morning. Heartland woke to the sound of wind sweeping through the valley. It carried the smell of rain and something else, a feeling Amy hadn't felt in weeks: purpose. She stood at the edge of the paddock, the cold air biting her cheeks, and watched the horses run through the open field. Their hooves struck the ground in rhythm, steady and alive. That rhythm matched something inside her, faint but beating again. The night before, Lou's idea had taken root: a charity rodeo. It wasn't just a fundraiser, it was a chance to remind the town what Heartland stood for: family, courage, and second chances. The plan was risky. If it failed, they'd lose even more. But Amy knew doing nothing was worse. When she told Ty, he hesitated at first. "We're already stretched thin," he said, voice low. "What if it doesn't work?" Amy looked at him, her eyes steady. "Then at least we tried to stand up for ourselves." He stared at her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, let's do it Heartland style." From that moment, the ranch came alive again. The barn lights stayed on late into the night. Lou made endless calls, rounding up volunteers. Jack dusted off his old saddle and started patching fences like he was 20 years younger. Even Lisa brought out her catering books, determined to feed half the town. There was laughter in the air again, mixed with the scent of sweat. "Hey, and hoped that Amy worked with the horses, training them for the event. Each movement brought back a part of her old self, the one who believed in miracles and hard work. Spartan moved with her, his steps sure and strong. She whispered to him as they rode, "We're not giving up, boy." Not yet. Ty set up a booth to showcase his veterinary clinic. He spent his nights fixing up old equipment, sanding wood, and making signs by hand. When Amy brought him coffee one night, she noticed the look in his eyes. Tired, yes, but alive again. "Feels like we're building something," he said quietly. Amy smiled. "We are." Word spread through Hudson faster than either of them expected. People remembered what Amy and Ty had done, the help they'd given, the kindness they'd shown. One by one, neighbors offered supplies, livestock, and time. Hudson himself showed up one morning, hat in hand, guilt written all over his face. "You shouldn't have to do this because of me," he said softly. Amy shook her head. "We're not doing this because of you. We're doing this because of what we believe in." On the day of the rodeo, the sky hung low with clouds, threatening rain. The bleachers filled slowly, people wrapped in coats and blankets. Amy stood by the gate, heart pounding. Ty joined her, his hand finding hers. "No matter what happens," he said, "we made it this far together." She squeezed his hand, whispering, "That's all that matters." Then the music started. Horses thundered through the arena, laughter echoed, and for the first time in months, Heartland felt whole again. It wasn't perfect. Some fences broke, a few events ran late, and the sky finally gave in, pouring rain halfway through. But no one left. People danced in the mud, cheered louder, and gave more than Amy ever hoped. When the final numbers came in, the total wasn't huge. But it was enough. Enough to catch up on bills. Enough to breathe again. Amy and Ty stood under the rain-soaked lights as the crowd began to fade. The air was cool and clean, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Amy whispered, "We did it." Ty smiled, rain dripping from his hair. "No," he said softly, "you did it." Behind them, Heartland stood tall and quiet, the fences mended, the lights still glowing. The storm had passed, and though the ground was wet and muddy, the air felt lighter. The spark that had nearly died inside them was burning again, steady, strong, and alive. Asterisk the night after the rodeo. Heartland slept under a restless sky. The rain had stopped, but puddles shimmered under the porch light like tiny mirrors, reflecting a ranch that had survived yet another test. Inside, Amy sat at the table with a mug of tea gone cold. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers over the list of expenses and donations. For the first time in months, the numbers didn't scare her. They weren't perfect, but they meant hope. Ty came in quietly, his hair still damp, his boots leaving small prints on the floorboards. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her, then at the papers. "You did it," he said softly. Amy shook her head. "We did it," she replied, her voice steady for once. But Heartland's story wasn't finished that night. The next morning, the sound of trucks and horses filled the yard. When Amy stepped outside, she froze. Dozens of people from Hudson were gathered at the gate, neighbors, riders, old clients, even children from her therapy sessions. Some carried feed, others tools, others envelopes sealed with care. Hudson stood at the front, hat in hand, his eyes full of guilt and gratitude. "Amy, Ty," he began, his voice catching. "You gave when you didn't have to. Now it's our turn." Amy tried to speak, but no words came. Behind her, Ty laid a hand on her shoulder, the kind of touch that said everything words couldn't. One by one, the townspeople stepped forward, donating, offering repairs, paying for clinic bills, even setting up new clients for Ty's practice. Lou came rushing out of the house, tears in her eyes. Jack stood by the fence, watching with quiet pride, his hat low over his brow. Heartland had always been about more than land or horses. It was about people, and that truth stood shining before them like sunlight after a storm. Amy finally found her voice. "You don't have to do this," she said, her throat tight. Hudson smiled. "Neither did you, but you did anyway. That's the difference." The crowd laughed softly. And for the first time in a long while, Amy felt her chest loosen. The fear, the guilt, the pressure, all of it started to lift. Heartland wasn't just surviving. It was breathing again. Later that evening, the sun slipped behind the hills, painting the sky in gold and lavender. Amy and Ty sat on the fence, watching Spartan graze nearby. The barn glowed in the distance, its lights warm against the darkening sky. Ty took a deep breath, the kind that fills you with peace after too many sleepless nights. "You know," Kay said, "I think maybe storms aren't meant to break us. Maybe they just wash everything clean so we can start over." Amy smiled softly, her eyes on the horizon. Maybe that's what Heartland has always been, a place to start over. For a long moment, they sat in silence, listening to the crickets and the distant rustle of trees. The land that had once felt heavy now felt alive again, pulsing with new life. Their troubles weren't gone. They still had debts, repairs, and long days ahead, but they weren't alone anymore. As the first stars appeared, Amy whispered, "We'll make it," Ty dot behind them. Heartland stood tall against the fading light. A living symbol of resilience, love, and the power of kindness returned. And though the storm had left its mark, it also left something else. A reminder that when hearts break for the right reasons, they always find a way to heal stronger than before. The morning sun rose quietly over the foothills, spilling light across the fields like a promise. Heartland looked new again, not in the way fresh paint makes something new, but in the way hope does. The fences gleamed with dew, the horses moved lazily through the pasture, and the air carried that clean, crisp scent that only comes after rain. Amy stood by the barn doors, breathing.